Hey, what's going on everybody? Well, we just finished looking at a new site for new shooters that gives you a little bit of extra visual help when it comes to finding that reticle, the Holosun 507C X2 ACSS Vulcan. So for a better reason why, let's take a closer look at it. Let's go.
Take it.
Profile mounting. So just as a refresher, since we've looked at a lot of Holosun sites, we previously looked at the 508T V2, the titanium version, and then its successor, the enclosed version, the 509T. So knowing this, where does the 507C fit in? Well, it was first released in 2018, so it's a little bit older than the 508T, but it was refreshed in 2020 and given the version number of X2. And just to clear up some confusion, X2 is actually the third version, the third revision. So it went V1, V2, and then X2. So despite all these different versions, externally, the 507C looks exactly like all the other open shell Holosun sites. It's got the same solar array at the top. It's got the same external battery door on the right. Dimensionally, it's exactly the same as the 508T. So if you have something cut already for the 508T, this will fit. It's easy to find an outside the waistband holster for it. We're using the Safariland ALS because of its secure locking mechanism and its easy detachability. So as far as mounting, this does take an RMR pattern, which is great. Speaking of adapter plates, we are using the Dawson Precision RMR adapter plate with the Staccato P DPO we featured in a previous video. I'll link it if you haven't seen it. It's an excellent pistol. So the cool thing about that adapter plate is it comes with its own rear sight. So as soon as you screw in the adapter plate and put the optic on, you have co-witness. So if that's your jam, this is the adapter plate for you. Just remember though, once you set the adapter plate in there, be sure to lock tight those screws. So now that's out of the way, we're going to take a closer look at the glass and reticle in the next section coming up. Glass and reticle. So the first thing we need to look for when we're talking glass quality is distortion for targets near and far. And the one thing I noticed about this site is for far targets, when you're looking through the glass, they appear as 1x, but for any close targets, let's say closer than 3 yards, it's going to be a little bit distorted. Like it's almost has a little bit of magnification effect, like 1 1/4 or so. But the practical effect of this is for close targets, you're shooting pretty fast anyways, so you don't tend to notice that magnification. So now that we've talked about the glass, let's power on the reticle and take a closer look at it because that's what makes this sight unique. So first we'll talk about the center chevron. It offers a very precise aiming point at the tip, and you got the base legs, which measures about 10 MOA across. So the net effect of that is basically for close shooting, you just splash that on the target, and it's a big enough chevron where you can use that. But if you need a shot of 50 yards or so, just use the tip. So outside of the chevron, the second part of the reticle is what makes this sight unique. That huge circle around the chevron. We're talking 250 MOA wide.
That's a huge bitch.
That circle exists for only one reason, to help with sight alignment. Now when you look at the sides of those circles, this explains it well in the manual, but the way I see it is basically whatever side of the circle you see, just move it towards the open side of the circle. Now, if you no longer need the circle or you just want to shoot with the chevron only, which I think is a great option, it's very easy to change reticles. Just hold the minus button and you'll have that option. Now, another consideration when changing reticles is that it makes a big battery life difference. So if you chose the circle and the chevron, it's 3,000 hours. If you turn off the circle, it's 25,000 hours, so quite a big difference. So keep that in mind. By the way, while we're talking pushing buttons and changing modes, the site does operate just like all the other Holosun sites in auto mode by default. If you want to change it to manual mode, just hold down the plus button for 3 seconds, it'll blink. Once you're in manual mode, then you'll be able to change between the 10 daytime settings and the 2 nighttime settings. Now for any color cast or tint through the glass, we didn't notice any. We didn't notice any glare when you have the sun at your back, or when you're shooting into the sun, you don't see any strange orbs or any difficult red glare. Now, as far as daytime settings, so one note about that is you can see it from the pictures themselves. At max brightness, it is way bright, more than bright enough for these desert lighting conditions that we test under, so you should be good to go there. So now that we've taken a look at that glass and reticle, we'll zoom out a little bit and we'll take a look at the controls coming up in the next section coming up. Controls. So as far as controls, these should feel really familiar to any Holosun user. So we have the adjustment screws on the top and the back. Now those take the special Holosun tool, or you have to use a really thin screwdriver to change the adjustments. As far as clicks, they feel really good. They're 1 MOA between clicks. So at 25 yards, we're talking 1/4 inches, so very easy to remember. As far as feedback, you'll definitely hear and feel a little click in between them, so the feedback is good. Now, on the right side, you'll find the extruded battery tray, which is one of the changes they made in version 2. So that can be easily changed now without flipping over the sight. You'll need a flathead or the included Holosun tool to take out the 1632 battery. So on the left side, you'll find the brightness buttons. They are arranged horizontally. In previous versions, in V1, they were also arranged horizontally, but in V2, you actually had a small, quick glimpse of the vertically stacked big buttons, which actually were easy to use and perform better, but of course, post Trijicon lawsuit, we'll never see those again. Still, they feel great and offer a really clicky feedback for you. Even though they're a little bit recessed and feel a little bit rubbery on the outside, they still work great. And we talked about changing modes previously under glass and reticle with the brightness button. One other option that was introduced in the X2 version is the lockout mode, which you also press and hold the plus button for 3 seconds. So if you're pressing the brightness buttons and the reticle's not changing, you're probably in lockout mode. So one last note about those buttons is, as far as functionally, they do control the power on and power off. So either button will power on, power off the sight. To power off, you just hold it, both buttons twice, just like in EOTech, and the sight will turn off. So Holosun's able to pack in a lot of functionality into just 2 buttons. And for those of us customers who've used Holosun for a while, we're kind of used to it now because that's just how they roll. All right, fellas, so what's the final verdict on this 507C X2 ACSS Vulcan? Well, if you've been paying any attention at all, you can see that red dots are kind of starting to take over pistol sights, just like they did with the rifle sights. But as we mentioned before, typically for new shooters, their #1 problem transitioning to a red dot sight on a pistol is the small window and finding the dot. Originally, I wasn't so sure that this solution was needed, but after spending some time with this one and considering that it's configurable, you can switch it off, I really like this sight for pretty much handing it to any shooter of any skill level and they'll get some value added out of it. So I think it's a great addition. And that's my final verdict. Hopefully it helps. So if you found this video useful, do me a favor, leave the like and comment so this small channel can keep growing. And if you found any of the equipment useful and you're interested in learning more about it, I'll leave it in the description. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys again next time.